today, for our life conversations with important people, we have Cathleen Summers as our presenter. She is a co-founding partner here at Generations Law Group. She is a nurse as well as an attorney. So a lot of this healthcare kind of side of the field, she has a little bit of experience with. She specializes in estate plans, guardianships, conservatorships. She is currently serving as the president of the Massachusetts chapter of the National Academy of Elder Law Attorneys. So Kathleen, I will turn it over to you.
Wonderful. Well, welcome everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today. So we're going to talk today about life conversations and about how to have those conversations with the important people in your life. For many of us, those important people could be family members, possibly someone like your children, if you have children. If not, then it really is other important people, could be good friends, could be extended family members that you would like to make sure understand what your wishes are. Oftentimes, and I'm so sorry, I'm having a little difficulty as I'm bringing this up, so excuse me while I'm taking a moment. Oftentimes people come in, of course, to see us for the estate planning itself. And we put documents together for individuals and let them know, what those documents are for and how those documents are going to hopefully reflect their wishes. But the other thing, though, about those documents that we always remind people is that documents are only as good, basically, as the paper they're written on. In order to be able to make those documents really reflect what your wishes are, you need to have conversations with the important people in your life so that they are able to then understand what your wishes are and be able to follow those wishes. So here we go. Finally, I'm able to bring this up. I do apologize. So why don't we start with really kind of what is the importance of having these conversations? Again, as I said, one of the big things about the conversation is that it is to set the framework. It's to make sure that people understand what's important to you, because oftentimes when they are stepping into your shoes, you're not able to any longer communicate what your wishes are, whether you be, level of incompetency has come in, or you're dealing with some kind of incapacity. Oftentimes you're not the one who's there any longer to be able to help explain what's important to you with respect to your life wishes and plans. Also, it's important to have these conversations because things like family unity, to be able to iron out concerns that may be present. As we all know, we've got many different players in our lives, and oftentimes not everyone's on the same page. So this gives an opportunity for you to be able to really talk about what's important to you, to set the agenda, to make sure that everyone is understanding what's critical with respect to your wishes and decisions that might be made for you. It can give you an opportunity to be able to gather other people's thoughts. Maybe you're looking to see what's important to others and how that might be incorporated, or to take into consideration some of the things that might be important to those who are around you. And certainly, as you're going through this process, one of the things that I hope that you'll receive is really the ability to gain some clarity, as you're thinking about what you want to convey to others in terms of what's important with respect to your life choices, your decisions in the future, things that you'd like to see happen. It helps you to really clarify those wishes as you move forward. So some of the things that you want to think about, these conversations, ideally, we want everyone, they'll just understand that people will know, this has been something that they would automatically know what I would want. I don't have to go through any kind of specific conversation with people. Or maybe, this has been a situation in which you've been able to ideally have ongoing conversations with the ones that you love, and that it's an easy thing to do, talking about someone's life wishes, talking about end-of-life decision-making. Ideally, we all wish that these had been conversations that had been going on for a long time and that they were easy ones to have. And that when you decide you do want to have these conversations, that everyone's going to be willing to talk about it. But realistically, that's not the truth. And I even think back to my own family situation, and I remember my grandmother, when I was much younger, would walk around the house and say, I really would like you to have this. I would really like to have your sister have that. Our immediate response to those conversations were, we didn't want to hear it. We didn't want to get involved in that. We didn't want to think about what would happen after she had passed away. And we certainly didn't want to be in a position in which we were looking to say, yes, we want the silver or we want the china or something to that effect. So as I've aged, one of the things that I realized is that was very important to her, to be able to begin to talk about what was important to her, the things that she wanted to pass on. These were material things, these were possessions, but it, of course, goes much deeper than that. Having conversations allows you to understand, if you're the person on the receiving end of the conversation, to begin to really understand your loved one, understand what's important to them. And if you're the one who's conveying this information, it gives you the ability really to be able to set, again, that framework, to be able to talk about why things are important to you. Not only possessions and how those are going to go forward, but to be able to talk about what's important to you in terms of life choices, important healthcare decision-making that we'll talk about, to make sure that your wishes are clearly understood so that they can be followed in the event that you're unable to be able to do these decision-making on your own. Oftentimes we're afraid that people will push back on us, that they're not emotionally ready to have those conversations. And so we have to be prepared for that, because we're the ones, when we're beginning the conversation with the loved ones in our lives, we're the one who's setting the tone. And we have to understand that sometimes those conversations don't come easy. And sometimes, what we look for is the ability to have something naturally prompt that conversation. When someone has lost a loved one in their life, have experienced some other kind of loss. Maybe there's been, even something in the newspaper or something, a celebrity has passed away, somebody who has had some kind of an illness that they're now dealing with their family. These can all be opportunities to be able to have an entree to beginning the conversation. So you want to be able to look for that. How can we begin that conversation in a way that feels a little bit more at ease and not something that's just being potentially brought up out of the blue? So when you're thinking about having these conversations, there's a few things that you want to keep in mind. First of all, you want to think about when. When do you want to start having these conversations? What's the good timing for that? Thanksgiving dinner, maybe a time when all the family's together, but it might not be the proper time to begin having these conversations. In other family situations, maybe it is a great time to begin to have that. You know your family, you know the important people in your life and what might be some good timing. But you do want to think about when you can have this conversation in a way in which it's deliberate, in which people can calmly sit down, not be distracted by many other things that might be happening. And you also want to remember that this conversation or these conversations don't have to happen all at once and probably won't happen all at once. They really shouldn't. There's a lot of things that you're talking about and discussing, and sometimes people need to take it in chunks, in smaller pieces. So it's an ongoing thing. But you want to think about that timing, when to have the conversation. You also want to think about where to have the conversation. You want to make sure that you're setting it in a place that it's a comfortable place, maybe not in the middle of a restaurant in which things might get emotional for people as they're having this discussion, but a safe place where people can feel comfortable talking. Again, where people are able to share emotions if necessary, ask questions, and they don't feel intimidated by the surroundings. So think about not only when the conversations can happen, but where they should happen. Where are you most comfortable as you're having the conversation and for the people who you are speaking with? And then you want to think about who should be part of these conversations. Certainly, the people who you have asked to be in those important fiduciary positions for you, people like your healthcare proxy, your power of attorney, maybe a trustee of a trust if you've put something together, and other critical family members, friends, the people who you consider to be kind of your team, you want to have as part of this conversation. Maybe it's not again all at once, although certainly it's helpful if people hear the same information, because you don't want one person hearing something, another hearing something else, and then potentially setting them up for some kind of conflict in the future. But you again know the people who you are relying on better than anyone else. And you need to think about who should be in the room, when should they be in the room, and where should that conversation happen. You also may want to include as well the professionals in your life. Now, whether again they're part of the family conversation, or whether it's a separate kind of conversation with them, you do want to make sure that they too understand what's important to you, how you want things to proceed if you are not in a position to be able to advocate for yourself in the future. So remember, think about when you want to have that conversation, where you want to have that conversation, and who do you want to have involved in the conversation. And the conversation is not just a one and done. It really can be something and should be something that happens over a period of time and gives people an opportunity to be able to digest what you're talking about and be able to come back and ask questions and be engaged in terms of the whole process. So what are the things that you should think about talking about and sharing with your group of important people? And this is a continuum. We have it as a circle because again, it's not just a one and done situation. As life goes on, these things, your ideas, your thoughts in these different areas may change. But it's critical that you continually think about these different aspects and that you share your views and wishes in them. So we're going to talk about living wishes, your health wishes, your financial wishes, your dying wishes, and your after wishes. And I'll go through each of these kind of segments with you. So when we're talking about living wishes, this is what's important to you now. What's important to you as you age, let's say? Is it staying in your community? Are you open to thinking about moving out of your current, let's say, living your home, your living situation? Would you be open into something like an assisted living community or maybe senior housing somewhere? Maybe your thought is that you're going to be living with another loved one. How does that all work? What is important to you now? Also things like, what's important to you in terms of your interests, charitable interests. You love to play, pickleball. You are a tennis fanatic. What's really happening in your life that you want to make sure continues in terms of if you are not able to, again, make decisions for yourself? How do you want to make sure that the people who support you and advocate for you can continue to support that kind of best life for you? And what does that best life look like? Oftentimes, as we age, one of the biggest areas of concern does come around where we're going to live, what our housing situation would look like. And it's really critical that you share what's important to you, what you would like to see happen or not happen. We always hear, for instance, I never want to get care in a nursing home. Well, I understand that. But there are times in which nursing home level care is appropriate and needed. And so thinking about, all right, if that is something that I needed, what community would I want to be in? Where would I want that nursing home to be located? What would be important to me with respect to a facility or community that I might need to get care at? So some of the things to think about in terms of living wishes. Think about what's important to you now and what's important to you as you age for your loved ones, the people who are going to be advocating and supporting you, to know and understand. Health wishes. This is really where you want to make sure that, first of all, you have a healthcare proxy in place and that you've legally identified decision makers for you should you not be able to make decisions for yourself. But really having conversations about health. If your health begins to decline, again, where would you want to have care? What type of care? Home care, people coming in to provide services to you. What's important to you in terms of potentially end-of-life decision-making? So if you were in a situation in which you could not make decisions for yourself and your proxy needed to step forward to be able to handle things like determination about a do not resuscitate or do not rehospitalize, helping to give them some framework is critical. That gives them the ability to know that the decisions that they're making are within the parameters of what would be acceptable to you. And it gives you peace of mind that someone who may have to step into your shoes knows what's critical to you and will follow your wishes. So talking about your healthcare wishes, talking about making sure that somebody has information about your healthcare providers or where to find that information is all really important to support anyone who may be stepping into your shoes to advocate about this area. Financial wishes. This is where having a durable power of attorney and or a trustee, if you have a trust in place, is very important. That you've made sure that you talk with this person, again, about from a financial standpoint, what is important to you. Are you somebody who does support charitable interests and would want to make sure that that was continued if you weren't in a position of handling your own finances? Being able to make sure they know where to find information about your finances. Again, you don't need to turn over your bank accounts and be able to, show the current detail of your financial life. But where would someone begin? If you've asked somebody to step into that important position as your power of attorney, where would they begin to look for things? Oftentimes we have a drawer in the house where we keep our taxes, we keep important financial information, maybe copies of our life insurance policies, etc. Make sure that this individual knows where to start. Make sure they know if you work with an accountant, whether you work with an attorney, whether you work with a financial advisor. Those are the important professionals in your life that your advocates should know who they are and how to get a hold of them in case something happens to you. And then again, talking about what's important to you with respect to finances. Maybe you're someone who says, it's really, really important to me, again, to continue this kind of charitable giving that I've always done. Or maybe you have children or other loved ones in your life who it's important to you that you continue to make gifts to them as you have throughout your life. You want to make sure, again, that the people involved in helping you with your financial wishes understand what's critical to you. Dying wishes. This is where, again, kind of really dovetails into your healthcare wishes, but certainly talking about those specific end-of-life decision-making. If necessary, where would you prefer to die? Would it be at home? Would it be, if in a particular kind of environment, hospice? Are you open to things like a DNR? Would you not want to have extraordinary measures? These are all critical things to talk about. Not easy to do. It's not the type of conversation that most people want to have, but important, not only that your wishes are understood, but again, that you give a framework to the people that you've asked to step into your shoes so they can know that they're acting on your behalf and within the framework that you have asked them to think about. And then last is after wishes, to be able to talk about after death. What is important to you? You can actually go now and work with a funeral home to set up end of life funeral arrangements so that they're all taken care of. They can even be prepaid in this day and age so that your loved ones, the people who are, again, in those important positions for you, don't have to actually put together end of life, afterlife decisions that they're already taken care of. But you want to make sure that you've laid it out as much as possible if these things are important to you. If it's important to you that you be cremated, or important to you that you be buried in a specific place, all the things that you need to make sure are communicated. Because oftentimes people will say to me, in my will, can I write these things out in my will, what I want to have happen after I died? And certainly we can put that in your will. But the truth is that oftentimes the will is not brought out, it's not read, it's not even considered until several weeks after someone has passed away. And at that point, any after wishes have already started to be taken care of. And so it's critical, again, that you lay these things out with the people who are going to be in the positions of handling things for you so they know what's important to you.
Kathleen, we have a question in the chat
Sure.
box.
Absolutely.
How on the most do you require reviving if recovery to conscious life is possible?
So the MOST form that's being referred to here stands for Medical Orders for Life-Sustaining Treatment. It's also sometimes called a POST form, which stands for Physician's Orders for Life-Sustaining Treatment. It's actually not, it's a legally binding document, but it's not a document that you create with an attorney. It's a document that you create with your physician. And it's a document that will outline some specifics. So it talks about things like do not resuscitate, do not rehospitalize. Maybe you're somebody who says, I don't want a feeding tube, or you only want hydration. This is where you can be more specific about what your potential healthcare wishes are, should you not be able to make decisions for yourself. It's like a prescription. Think about it like a prescription for a medication, because it's something that can follow you from one setting to another, whether you be at home, in some kind of a community setting, or a facility setting like a nursing home or a hospital. The MOST form still has effect because it's a medical order. So if I'm hearing the question correctly, is it that if you have a MOST form and you've changed your mind, what do you do? In that case, it's working with your doctor to update the MOST form. If you're competent still to do so, by all means, you have the right to change what you have written in a MOST form. And the person may want to provide a little bit more clarification in terms of the question.
Okay. And they also ask, where do you write your after wishes?
So there's a couple of ways to do after wishes. One is, again, through pre-planning. You can actually sit down with a local funeral home. We're fortunate here in the Northeast that our funeral homes, for the most part, have been very long-standing, and there's lots of regulations around them in terms of pre-planning and prepaying for funeral wishes. But you can actually outline them from everything from, flowers to the obituary and the rest of it. Now, if you don't want to go that far to actually outline it with a funeral home, the next step would be to lay it out in writing and provide that to the people who are, again, critical decision makers in your life, so that they know upon your passing what you want to have done. And that sharing that with the larger group of individuals also is something to think about, so that everyone's on the same page, that this is what your wishes are, this is how you want things to be handled.
Okay. A little clarity on the MOST question. It's hard to understand what choices to make to achieve the above goal. Like, where does this dying wish statement go?
It is difficult. And the thing, so the MOST form, one thing to know about a MOST form is that because it's a medical order, it is not something that is done for everyone with a physician. So someone who is an otherwise healthy individual, certainly a doctor is not going to order them not to be resuscitated. So putting the MOST form in, most likely a doctor will not sign that order for you. Typically, we see most forms put in place when someone is at end of life. So they've dealt with either a chronic illness that's going to lead to eventually their death, or they're dealing with an acute illness, which is believed again to lead to their passing, cancer, something to that effect. And in some instances, a physician will put it in place for someone of a certain age. Now, I say that because it's very subjective. Is this something that someone would do when someone's 85? Would they do it when they're 90, 95? It's very subjective in terms of the physician that you might be working with. So most are done with you and your physician, and this is where you can put clarity. But let's say you're not fitting into one of the categories in which somebody would put together a MOLST form for you. Certainly, your healthcare proxy, the person who you have asked to step into your shoes for healthcare decision-making, remember that document doesn't talk about specifics of what you do and don't want to have done. It just gives authority to somebody else to make a broad range of decisions regarding your healthcare. So it is critical that you have a conversation with the people or person that you have asked to be your healthcare proxy so they know what you would want to have done. You certainly can put it in writing to them to say, look, this is what's important to me. This is what I would like in terms of this kind of a situation. There's a document that's been long-standing out there called the 5 Wishes. It's a document that takes someone through different questions about healthcare decision-making to help provide some guidance. But one thing to remember here in Massachusetts, we don't look to a document like that. If there's a healthcare crisis and you cannot make healthcare decisions for yourself because you're incompetent or incapacitated, we will look for a proxy. And if there is no proxy in place, then there'll need to be a court proceeding to put a guardian in place. So we always have a person making this decision. We don't rely just on written documentation.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely. So why don't we talk a little bit about handling resistance? So as I talked about with the example that I had given when my grandmother would go around and try to say, I would like this person to get that, I'd like that person to get that, and the resistance that comes up. And it's a very, very common resistance about not wanting to have these kinds of conversations. Or if you're trying to have this type of conversation with someone that you love to try to get them to share with you, how do we break through some of that resistance? So let me focus first on the one in terms of handling resistance for someone you're trying to speak with about these kinds of issues. For instance, someone says, they're living in their home for a long time and it's become a situation in which it's not safe for them anymore. And they really need to think about getting out of that 4-bedroom colonial that they can't manage. How do you begin to have that conversation with them? So one of the things to think about, person saying, why should I move? I don't need to move from here. I'm doing fine. One of the questions that you could ask, do you think things are as good as they can be here? Are you living the best life? Are you able to do the things that you want to here? Sometimes it's baby steps in the sense that, if the house has become too big, now it's talking about how, if they want to stay there, what kinds of modifications can be made? How are those modifications going to be paid for? Will they accept help into the house? And when you're on the other side of all of this and you're thinking about, okay, I'm living in my 4-bedroom colonial and it's really my goal to stay here for as long as I can. How do you have that conversation with your important people? Is you talk about, this is what I'm willing to have happen. If I need to have extra help, I'm willing to have the extra help come in, and this is how I can pay for it. You need to look at all of those different aspects of it so that you, again, are putting your important people in a position of being able to meet your needs and understanding what your needs are. What if someone's saying, I'm not ready yet. I don't want to move. Well, what is it that's getting in the way of your moving? What is it that's stopping you? Talking a little bit about what are some of the things that are causing you to say, I'm not ready yet to make this next step. I'm not sure I want to leave here. Get to know why your loved one is in that position about not wanting to leave yet and not being ready. Oftentimes we'll be afraid to say something to somebody, you're starting to see that a loved one is starting to have some difficulty, and their response to be was, what, you don't think I'm doing okay on my own? I'm fine. I'm doing fine. Well, again, turning that around as opposed to saying, I don't think you're handling things well, saying, is there anything that you're worried about during the day or at night when you're alone? I used to always say that no one would ever choose to go into a nursing home. And practicing now, for over 20 years, I've learned that that is not true. One of the biggest issues as someone begins to age is the isolation and the fear that can sometimes come with being isolated. If someone falls, that there isn't help there to be able to address that issue, that they're not going to be able to, that they'll be alone when a crisis happens. And so that's a real fear that people have as they begin to age, that becomes more amplified as they begin to experience some other forms of isolation. Maybe they're not driving or won't go out at night to drive anymore. They've lost a loved one recently. So that isolation issue becomes bigger and bigger as we age. And learning to look at some other ways of maybe addressing some of the resistance that may come around that. And again, if you're the individual who is aging, you need to be aware of this. You need to think about, what happens as I begin to age and I'm not able to do some of the things that I used to do. I'm not driving at night as well as I used to. I even notice that now in my life, that nighttime driving is just not something that I enjoy doing as I used to, or don't feel the same confidence in that I used to. So as I continue to age and potentially that becomes more and more of an issue, how am I going to address that? And being open to how that's going to be dealt with and what the different options may be out there. So depending on what side of kind of this conversation you're on, if you're the one who's trying to break through some of the resistance, one way to do it is to try to reposition the questions around it. Instead of saying, you're not safe living home alone anymore. This isn't right for you. I'm not comfortable with your being home alone. How do you change that around to get the individual to start thinking about how things are really going for them, what the concerns are, what the issues may be, and how keep them part of the solution as to how you might address these things. And if you're the individual who's aging and starting to see some of these issues arise, you need to keep yourself open to what other options are out there. I always try to remind clients that the way to stay in control is to keep yourself thinking ahead, to make sure that you have thought about the different situations that may arise, and to get in place the support system that you need, the important decision makers, the legal documents, to ensure, and having these conversations to ensure that your wishes are known and followed as time progresses.
Kathleen,
Yep.
I'm going to interrupt you. We have a couple of questions. We're going to step back a little bit,
Sure.
back to the healthcare proxy. Who would be a proxy, and which one rules, the healthcare proxy or the most?
So the healthcare proxy, if first of all, it's something that you have to put in place. It's a written document in which you're naming somebody to step into your shoes to handle healthcare decision-making. And the person that you want to choose to do that, and typically we always recommend you have at least a primary and one secondary, and certainly you can have more than one more than one successor healthcare decision maker if you choose. But you want to make sure it's somebody who will follow your wishes, who will take time to understand what your wishes are and will make sure that they're in a position to advocate for your your wishes, should you not be able to do so for yourself. Now, the MOLST or the healthcare proxy. So that's a really interesting question. So the MOLST is a medical order. And one of the things about it is not only to memorialize what your wishes are, but also to ensure when you're dealing with other healthcare providers that they will follow it. So let me give you an example. Someone is hospitalized. They have been dealing with an illness that is going to lead to end of life. And the decision is they want to go back home. And typically the desire at that point is that they die at home. But as we know, when someone is in that situation, oftentimes family is around and family will panic. Let's say when an event happens, maybe the person, now has gone into some kind of cardiac arrest at home. Oftentimes the first impulse is to dial 911. We need to get somebody there to help us in this situation. 911 comes, and their job is to deal with the emergency. And they will oftentimes go so far as to resuscitate somebody and transport them to a hospital. When there's a MOLST in place and there's a medical order saying, do not resuscitate this person, when 911 is called, the individuals responding are able to come and follow that medical order. So now they're able to follow the medical order that says, do not resuscitate this person. And so that's just kind of an example of how a MOLST works. But when we're talking about end-of-life decision-making and there's a MOLST in place, and now you've got a healthcare proxy who's saying, I don't want to honor that MOLST, it can become a big issue, because the belief is, of course, that the individual had the MOLST put in place while they were competent, and it expresses what their wishes were. And now you've got a proxy whose job is supposed to, yes, independently evaluate what's happening so they can make an appropriate decision, but to make that decision based on the person's wishes, not their own. So if they're going against those wishes, there better be some strong reasoning as to why they're doing so. And typically these things don't happen. I mean, people have these decisions made for them every day in hospital settings by their healthcare proxies, by people who are advocating for them, and there's never an issue. But if you have one thing that's telling professionals to do it one way, and this was something that was done by the individual when they were otherwise competent, and you have a proxy who is now going against those wishes without strong reasoning why they are, there's a problem. And oftentimes this is the things that we'll see come to a court to make a decision on.
Thank you. There's another question about how to get the guidance and how to pay for the care you desire and learning what those options are.
Well, so that becomes kind of a bigger decision or bigger kind of question. There are certainly professionals out there. There are what we call care managers, or what we also call aging life specialists, who help to deal with understanding what options are for care, whether it be at home or in some kind of a community or facility setting. These are usually professionals who have like a nursing or social work background, and they're incredibly knowledgeable about the different options that are in your area and can help you be able to parse through that if you're looking for options for yourself or for a loved one. Certainly working with professionals like your attorney to make sure that you have all the appropriate authority in place to be able to make decisions. Or if you are the person who's been asked to be the healthcare proxy or power of attorney for someone else, working with a professional to understand what your the parameter of decision making is for you. and what you can and can't do in those positions. Paying for things is a little bit of a different question. Certainly, things, private pay is always one way to handle this. There's long-term care insurance that people can purchase as well that oftentimes takes care of certain aspects of particularly housing, whether it be in a assisted living facility, whether it be getting care at home, or whether it be a nursing home. And for people who have certain lower levels of assets and or income, there are other programs like Medicaid, and working with a professional to understand whether you can qualify for that and whether you want to qualify for that and what it would cover would be something critical to do if you're facing some kind of an issue or concerned about long-term care.
Thank you.
So why don't we talk a little bit about overcoming some misconceptions that are out there? One of the things that we hear often from clients, prospective clients, is, I don't have a lot of assets. Why do I have to think about planning? Well, when we think about planning, it's much more than just what happens to my assets after I pass away, or if I don't have assets, worrying about whether loved ones are going to receive something from you. Planning is more about living, in the sense that planning for your how finances would be handled, planning for how healthcare decisions would be made for you in the event that you're still alive, but aren't able to make these decisions for yourself. That's the more critical part of planning, I always try to tell clients, because it affects you. Planning for what happens after you've passed away, you're not here anymore. It's not affecting you specifically. But planning for what happens while you're still alive, but if you're unable to handle these decisions for yourself, that's critical. So that's really what planning should encompass, making sure that you're talking about living concerns as well as everything else. What happens while you're alive? What are your wishes? How do you want things to be managed while you're still alive, but if you're not able to manage them for yourself? So planning is much more comprehensive than just what happens with my assets after I pass away. Another big misconception that we hear all the time is, my loved ones already know what I want. Well, if your loved ones already know what you want and you haven't had the conversation with them, boy, those are some pretty, perceptive people. And that doesn't happen. It doesn't happen by osmosis, any of this. You really need to have these important conversations, as uncomfortable as they may be. It is critical that if you are the individual who, again, is the aging individual, making sure that the important people in your life know what the framework should be for decision-making, gives you peace of mind and gives them the tools they need to make the decisions. If you're the person who has been asked to be in these positions, you want to have that framework. You want to have the ability to have these conversations while you can, so that if you have to step forward and make decisions for your loved one, you know that you are doing it within the parameters of what they would want you to do. And it really can give incredible peace of mind. The last thing that we ever want to see is for someone to sit in front of us and say, I had to act as the healthcare proxy for my loved one. And boy, we had some really hard decision-making to make. And I don't know whether I made the right decision or not. That's a terrible position to have to be in. But if you've had conversations with them beforehand, you can have some peace of mind that you're making decisions within the parameters that they would have wanted. So critical to have the conversation. Another misconception is that talking about these things will make them happen. We joke a little bit, that when someone signs the documents in the office, now they can go out and get hit by the bus. That is not what happens. This is not what planning is about, to make sure, that I'm going to go out now and something bad is going to happen. Planning should be that if something happens, and again, nobody has the crystal ball to see how life is going to play out, but if something happens, You have laid out a plan and you have done what you can to make sure that what's important to you, what's critical in terms of your own happiness in life, and in your philosophy about life is known and followed whenever possible. So just because you sign the documents, you're not going to go out into the parking lot and get hit by the bus. Can't guarantee it, but I can tell you that's most of the time not what's going to happen. And I'm never going to go to a nursing home for care. I'm never going to get a nurse. I'm never going to go to one of those facilities. Well, again, that should never be the full goal of planning on what happens if you go into a nursing home. That's a part of planning, but nobody can say, I'm never going to have that happen. There can be times in which it's not in anyone's control, yours or the people who love and support you. Sometimes getting care in a facility is what's needed for your safety, for your health, for your well-being. And so it is a part of planning. It is not all of planning in any way, shape, or form. As I said, knowing your living wishes, knowing what's important to you as you're living your everyday life, that's a critical part of planning. Nursing home or care when you get sick is just a part of it. So again, one of the things that you want to do when having these important conversations is you want to keep it as positive as possible. Remember why you're having these conversations. It's to make sure that your wishes are known, or again, if you're one of the people who's part of the team of helping to support this individual, that you know the framework. So things to think about. Times have changed, everything has changed, people are living longer, we're doing more, and we have more options that are available to us. The path is not clear, it's more complex, and having the conversations to understand the complexity and to understand again what's important to that individual is critical. People plan for so many things in their life. They plan to go take a vacation, they plan for months to go take a vacation somewhere. Planning for your aging successfully is as critical as anything else, if not more. You know, as people say, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. And in some ways, that's true. Just waiting for something to happen, that is a plan. Doing nothing and just waiting for things to happen, believe it or not, is a plan, but you're not going to have any control over what happens. When you do some kind of planning and you think about what's important to you, you do have the ability to, even if you can't control every little bit of it, you are able at least to know that your wishes are known and that the decisions that are going to be made are made within the parameters of what's important to you. One of the things we always tell people is to learn technology, keep yourself as much as you can active and engaged with what's happening. That really helps to take away some of that isolation. You know, we all saw in the last couple of years how isolation has affected people. We were all thrown into a position that none of us had ever thought would happen. And look at how we've all had to pivot in terms of our lives. That's critical as we age as well, that we continually reevaluate what's happening, where we are. Is this working for us? Do I need to change my plan? Do I need to change, again, maybe some of the people who I've asked to be in these important decision-making positions for me? Do I need to change the plan that I've talked about with them about what's important to me? Constantly being willing to pivot as you need to as times change around you. And keeping yourself going, keeping yourself engaged where you can, keeping yourself active are all really critical pieces of making sure that aging as positively as possible, as successfully as possible happens. So that's it for the presentation today. Are there any other questions that people have?
Well, there are a couple more questions in the box. What kind of back to that previous question about getting guidance to pay for care you desire and learning what those options are. They're asking what kind of professional would advise on funding desired care?
So there's a couple of things. Certainly, attorneys can help you with that and talk about what the different options are in terms of things like Medicaid, Medicare, different insurance options. Medical insurance themselves, the Council on Aging have a SHINE program. The SHINE counselors are highly educated on the different options in terms of different insurances that are out there. And if you're going through any kind of questioning about, should I go with a Medicare, choice plan? Should I get some kind of supplement? They can be very helpful in helping you parse through that and create that very complicated Medicare system. So definitely SHINE counselors. Working with, an insurance agent or your financial planner and talking about something like long-term care insurance. People will ask me all the time, should I get long-term care insurance? And as everything we attorneys answer, it's always, it depends. And what you want to do is talk with someone and see what kinds of plans are available to you and what's the cost structure of those plans, because you need to make sure that you can afford that kind of plan if it is what is going to work for you. So finding out about long-term care insurance, getting educated about it is always something I recommend people do. That doesn't mean you're necessarily going to buy it, but you do want to see whether it's something that might be beneficial, supplemental to what your wishes are.
Thank you. What responsibility does an executor have?
So executor is really kind of an old school term now. We changed the nomenclature for probate here in Massachusetts back in 2012, and you're now going to see it referred to as a personal representative, but it's really the same thing. And this is the person who you have asked to manage your estate after your death. And this is a role that's defined within a will, a last will and testament. So when someone dies, if they own assets in just their own name and there are no named beneficiaries on those assets, we don't know what to do with the asset. They own a bank account with a Middlesex Savings Bank and it's just in their name and we don't know what to do with that money. They own property somewhere and nobody else owns it with them. We don't know what to do with that property. This is where the probate proceeding comes into play. Probate is a process in which if they have a last will and testament, we bring that to the court and we get authority for that personal representative to be able to manage the person's estate. So it's the job of the personal representative to manage someone's estate who has passed away.
Can the same person take on those roles, the power of attorney, proxy, trust, and representative roles?
Absolutely. You can have the same person in all those critical roles. The most important thing to think about when you are thinking about who may be the best person to act in one of these roles is to think about that person, what their strengths and weaknesses are. So for instance, roles like the personal representative, a trustee, a power of attorney, and what we call an attorney in fact. Those are oftentimes more financially related, and being able to choose somebody who can make and manage make good decisions about finances and manage those finances appropriately would be critical. The healthcare proxy, that's somebody who is going to be willing to step into your shoes for a healthcare decision. And sometimes the people who could be really good at finances may not be so good at healthcare decision making and vice versa. Certainly you can have the same person for all the roles, but you want to think about each of the roles independently and make sure you're choosing the right person for that role.
Thank you. This might be a whole nother, well, I know it's a whole nother webinar, but when is a revocable trust needed or not?
That is a whole nother webinar. And we do have a couple, though, what I hope are useful resources. Certainly, someone could reach out to Carol or go on our website. We do have an ebook that you can bring down that says how a trust can help you and your family. Talks a little bit about what revocable trusts are, as well as irrevocable or irrevocable trusts, and how they can play into your estate planning.
I put the link in the chat box for downloading a conversations ebook, but that link will also take you to the menu of all of our different ebooks. And we have the ebook on when is a trust right for you and your family. We also have a basic estate planning ebook that outlines all the different roles that Kathleen was just talking about, the healthcare proxy, the personal rep. So if you have further questions about that, that would be a really great place to start. Even on our website, we have lots of articles about all these different aspects of estate planning. And of course, our YouTube channel has all of our previous videos, like we've done webinars on revocable trust and irrevocable trust. So feel free to go to our YouTube channel. It's Generations Law Group. Just search that on YouTube and you'll find us there. Kathleen, would you say that perhaps if you are someone who wants to express your wishes, but you have a difficult time verbally talking to people, would writing a letter or something like that to somebody, would that be a good idea?
It's certainly an excellent start. Again, it's a way of helping you to find clarity about what's important to you and be able to begin to express it. The reason I say it's a start is because the conversation allows you to be able to make sure that your wishes are being understood. If there's, gives an opportunity for clarifying any concerns, discussing any potential issues that may be arising, that you might not get out of just a written letter. And it also helps you to really kind of solidify, yes, this person who I'm asking to be in this position for me gets it. They understand and they're willing to be able to work with me on that and to be able to fulfill what I'm asking them to do. A letter is a great start. It is better than not doing anything, but it is just a start. And if you could, I'd ask you to think about it as kind of a jumping off point, as an ability to be able to formalize your wishes, get clarity for yourself, clearly explain what you want, but then make sure you do follow up if you can with some kind of a conversation to make sure that the person does agree to and understand what you want. Because ultimately, it's not the letter that's going to control things. It's the individual you've asked to be in that important position who's going to have the ultimate say. And so the written document is wonderful, but it's not legally binding.
Okay. Thank you. And that looks like it does it for our questions in the chat box. And I just want to let everyone know, if you have further detailed questions, especially on what you want to do for your long-term care planning, Kathleen, as well as any of our attorneys here at Generations Law Group, are certainly able to help you answer those questions. So feel free to contact our office and set up an appointment. So Kathleen, thank you so much. We're getting some thank yous in the chat box for an excellent presentation. And I thank everybody for coming today, and have a great day, everybody.